I'm Gary. I'm a sophomore on Team 125.
I'm Norm Eisman. I work down at Brooklyn Nuclear Power Station. I've been doing this since about 2012.
And I'm Christine. I'm a mentor at 125. Did you have a question? Make sure you talk loud.
Yeah. How did it feel originally going through the chairman's process, from the beginning to the end? How did you feel about it?
Every year it seemed daunting. Even this past year, it was just how do we get started? What is everything gonna look like? I mean, when you have one piece of paper, I think that's the most intimidating part. Once you have something started, it got a lot easier from there. I know. So for the past 3 years, our team has used the same chairman's theme, which is everyone everywhere, because it's our mission statement, which is even a STEM for everyone everywhere. So that is our theme for the past 2 seasons. This is really what we stand for and believe in. But before we had that sort of solidified message that we were going with year after year, it was really difficult to come up with that theme as well and what we were going to send it around. So when we finally did come up with everyone everywhere, we started our submission probably in December, and I don't think we had everyone everywhere until February. It was just a 3-month struggle of what is this going to be? What is this going to be? How are we going to get this all together? And when we finally got it, it was pretty special and magical, but it was a really hard 3 months to get there. So I guess overall, it's hard.
Yeah, and I guess I think we call it a very typical chairman's schedule. So, our students would be writing the essay. Judges, and so the kids changed it so that it matched the audience of the house.
Yeah, one thing I would recommend is don't plan when you do your presentation that you're going to have a video screen there, because at several of the events we've been in the locker rooms, and we're in the I think it was Bryant University, we're in the men's locker room, and it was like one team came in and they're looking like, oh, we thought we're going to have a wall to show it on. Well, not in the locker room. So you just got to be prepared, either bring your own monitor or not go with a video type presentation during it.
To add on what Jordan said, our kids were always afraid of bringing technology into the room. They were scared they would get in there and it wouldn't work. And every year was a huge debate. Yeah, every year they went back to the non-technical way of presenting information.
Question. We're a veteran team, but we're in the process of rebuilding because our team relocated a number of years ago, and we actually went down to 4 members. We're at 42, so we're definitely in the process of rebuilding. Most of our mentors, other than our engineers, are brand new and have little to no experience. And so we're trying to, this is the first time in over 10 years, we're working towards submitting for chairmans. What would be I don't want to say the most important thing to focus on, but what's kind of the best first step starting with nothing?
But I think one of the things is a presentation, or the essay, because the essay is hopefully going to cover everything you're doing in the community and to promote STEM and everything, and then your presentation can build off of that. But make sure that they really proofread it, because when I'm reading essays, and typically before the first week, I got about 20 of them to read. And as soon as I start seeing spelling errors, stuff like that, and it always says this was checked by so-and-so, but I would highly recommend a couple of people read through it and really think about it. So I think building a strong essay and then your presentation will take those things and hit some of the highlights. You know, the fact that you've grown so much and whatever you're doing out in the community.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, like starting with the essay, looking at the outline of the essay, like the executive summary questions, and start putting in just like bullet point facts, and then grow it from there. Like talk about your story from, you know, where you started, where things kind of dipped down, and where you're rebuilding now. I think is going to be a really good personal story kind of twist to put onto your chairman's submission for sure. But starting with just lists, like look at the different topics. So you're going to want to talk about team history, community outreach, first outreach, team impact on your members, and kind of quantifying the different things that you know about each section, and then elaborating on that is always a good start. And it's a less overwhelming start, even before you look at the executive summary and stuff, like just kind of taking even just Post-it notes or whatever and writing down facts and categorizing them is really good.
Can we put in, we almost have 2 chapters to our team. We have the chapter before the team moved and the chapter since the team moved. And there were outreach components before we moved that we haven't been able to reestablish. Toys for Tots was something the team had done, you know, a number of years ago. We haven't had the adult support to do that. Can we include things we have done in the past and things we're planning to do in the future in that?
You can, but the guidelines are focused on the last, I think it's 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So and I've seen some where they talk about everything that was done 10 and 15 years ago, and it's like, okay, what did you do in the last 3 to 5 years? Because I think it tells you to focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can talk about what you did way in the past, and that's what your goals are to do in the future, but you got to be looking at the last 3 to 5.
I guess I just want to add to what everyone is saying, that really big kudos to your team. You're breaking up a little bit, but I think if I heard correctly, you haven't submitted for tournaments for 10 years and you're looking to do it this year. And that's just absolutely amazing and incredible. So no matter what happens, I just want to say good on you, as we see here in Australia, because, you know, it may seem like a really small act, but just the submission process, I think, really gets you thinking about it and your team thinking about it. So really, really big kudos. After 10 years, I don't think, you know, that's an incredible gap. So really good on you.
It was actually our kids that came forward and said, you know, we really want to try to do this. And we said, you know, we don't know where we're at in terms of the scheme of it, but the kids actually wanted new subgroups on our team this year. And we've actually created a Chairman's Award subgroup, a business subgroup, and a sponsorship subgroup specifically to look at addressing some of those things.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really good idea, since like Chairman's isn't just, I don't know how to say it, like a run, it's like a marathon. So it's something you need to work on every single year. So if you start off now, then maybe in the future it starts getting better. So I think it's a good idea.
We're looking at this as kind of our foundation here.
Oh crap. Hold on. No. I broke everything.
So close.
I tried so hard.
The other thing with the chairmans is a lot of times it's the more business side of the people that get involved in that. So if somebody wants to be involved in the team, but they're not programmers and stuff like that, it gives them another outlet for their expertise, and it's good for the rest of the team too. Because I remember there was a team from, I think it was Mayhem out of New Hampshire, that they had a young lady that did the presentation. She was the spokesperson. And she was awesome, but she was going to finance, I think it was. So she had no intention to be involved necessarily with geeky stuff. But, you know, she was great, and she was great for the team too.
We've actually had a couple kids come from business clubs at our high school specifically to work on the business aspect of the team.
Right, that's good.
Lucky.
Any other questions kind of pertaining to the whole topic of like the submission itself or like preparing for the presentation? Yeah.
I'm part of I'm part of a team where like most of the people want the award to go through, but they don't really want to, but like just simply be part of it. They don't necessarily know how to. I think it's one of the reasons why. What would you recommend for how to get the team involved? Because they have the resources, they have the materials, and they have what it takes to make it into something great. It's just putting it into not just paper, but into action.
Right. So I feel like the Neutrons were that way for a long time, where they were doing all this stuff like community outreach, team involvement, but nobody like cared enough to submit what they were working on into the chairman's submission. So I think if you can get at least like a few dedicated students that really care about showing the impact and the outreach, that's a good starting point. And then involving, you know, some of the technical people into that conversation at least, rather than just being like, you need to sit down and write this award submission with me. A good thing to do would be to talk to like one of your lead mentors and sit down and get an idea of like team history and stuff and start translating that into, you know, facts in your award submission. But really doing some research in the off season amongst your team, like getting information about, you know, how many demos did we do? How many people did that impact? You know, how many times has like a technical resource been used at an event? How many teams have we helped at events? And getting that kind of data collection, you could do it through like Google Forms and surveys and stuff. That way people can do it remotely, or it can just be conversations. And like, that's a good place to start, but not doing it yourself is really important. Oh, we can't hear you. Can you hear me here?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can't hear anybody else.
Okay,
Oh.
so maybe if you want to ask a question, come talk loudly. So his question was, it was, how do you get, you know, your team more involved with the chairman's process? Like, if the team isn't necessarily interested in the award submission, like you have what it takes, you have all the bits and pieces, but getting the team to kind of commit to the award in the submission.
Yeah, cool.
So did you have anything you guys want to kind of suggest for that?
Yeah, I guess one thing that we did was, so our meetings outside of abilities used to always be on Friday night. They've been on Friday nights for like 6 years now, which is when we meet. One of the things we did is we had our outreach side start meeting on Tuesday nights. What that allowed students to do was really get to know both sides of the team. And we found that really, really helped our numbers for the outreach side.
Yeah, one of the other things that we did is, because we met on Friday nights, we usually, just about every single week, the kids would get together at a mall right across the street from our meeting place for dinner ahead of time. So we started having them bring their dinner over to our meeting space, and the outreach team would put together what we would call Fun Fridays. And it would usually be a game show of some kind. So they might play Jeopardy, or they might play the $25,000 pyramid, or something along the lines, to not only let the rest of the team know what was going on for chairman and outreach, but also try to get them more engaged. And so we tried to do fun stuff to make sure that the entire team was involved, and that seemed to really help.
Yeah. How different, or for your presentation, should it be reiterating what was in your essay, or like how different should it be from the things you submitted? Did you hear that?
Yeah. Do you want to answer that? Because I know you guys have a really good response to that.
It's hard not to know other people. Okay, so yeah, we would repeat some stuff. So this year we had our Big 5 programs, and that was across everything So if you read our essay, it's there. Had issues refilming the presentation, but it will be up eventually, I promise. And they're in there, and they were also in the video. But then we would always also try to add something new. And that wouldn't necessarily be something big, but we wanted to always leave the judges feeling like we hadn't told them everything. So we wanted to add in some new content as we went along the road as well. So there were things in the essay that didn't make the presentation cut. There are things in the presentation that hadn't been in the essay. And then the video is sort of this separate things. The judges may or may not watch it depending. To answer your question really shortly, we would repeat a lot, but not everything.
Right, and I guess another way to put that is, we wanted to make sure that we told the same story, that it was a consistent message across all parts of the submission. But when you got into the little nitty-gritty details, we tried to say it in slightly different ways so we can support the judges. Please realize we don't know anything more about the judging process than the judges do, but it was our thought that it could keep the judges more entertained or more interested in what we were talking about. There's a better chance they would progress. When we did the submission, we would always also share a spreadsheet, a huge spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet of everything that we had ever done, had done out, and then we would map out which pieces of those things were going to go into each part of the submission to try to make sure that it was fairly balanced across all of them. Again, our 5 major programs we talked about everywhere. That was the consistency. That's what we really wanted the judges to remember. But then we would sprinkle in those other things as we thought it was necessary to add either human interest. We wanted to make sure we told stories, or potentially statistics. We wanted to make sure we had stats across all things. So we really tried to balance in that way.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is, I know the way I do it is before the first week, the last few years I've done 3 weeks in a row, okay? So I look at the ones for the first week and I read them, and I may see that team the first week, and maybe the second or the third week. I don't reread the essays usually. So you just want to keep that in mind, that it could be a couple weeks ago that they read your essay. Now we usually take notes of that stuff and do highlighting and everything, but don't assume that they'll remember everything that's in the essay. The other thing to think about is the time, because it's 12 minutes. And a few years ago when we did it here at Northeastern, I got yelled at every time because we let the students go over the 12 minutes. And so you got 12 minutes, and when I've been doing it is I have my iPad up with a clock going, a countdown timer, that both the students and the judges can see, okay? At Worlds, when we did it 2 years ago, the team I was on did not allow the students to see the time. So we saw the time. They had to have been good enough to know that it's technically 7 minutes presentation and 5 minutes of discussions or interrogation. Now, we tend to be at the district events, we're a lot leaner on that. It's okay, you got 12 minutes, but we had some last year that were going on about 10 or 11 minutes, and finally we had to say, okay, you got to be quiet so we can ask some questions. So you really got to, and that comes to practice, so that you know how long your presentation is going to really take.
Yeah.
A question for you two, if you don't mind. When you did your presentation and your essay, did you base it more towards your experiences on the field or outside of the field?
Sorry, we didn't get that.
So he was wondering, when you did your presentation and essay, did you base kind of like your topics and stories about what you were doing on the field or more so off the field as a team?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was about they were normally about our core outreach projects, so I guess off the field. So in this year's presentation, for example, one of the, or actually 2 years ago was a better one. One of the girls, she told the story about how when she was 12, she saved her sister from a riptide, because that was how we conveyed the message about all the water safety programs that our team does. We do a lot in that space. We work with the foundation in that space. this year at championships, we talked about the Robots Around the World program. We did so using the story of Navajo Mountain, which is a native Indian reservation where we started a team in Utah. And so we sort of used stories from our outreach projects as a way to describe the outreach projects. We found, at least to us, it seems like we've gotten good results with that, so we think it really sticks with the judges. One of the things that we oftentimes do is we take parents from the team who are well familiar with FIRST, and we would do testing with them. So we would tell them the presentation, we'd give them a 5 to 10 minute break, and then we'd say, okay, what did you remember? And using the stories, we got better test results. So I don't know, I guess we did audience testing, and that was what worked the best, we found, for the largest majority of people.
Yeah, the other thing that the kids always do is they wanted to make sure that everything that they were saying, whether it was in the written submission or the presentation, had impact. And so if they would, back in the early years, going back to like the early days of this, when we didn't have a whole lot to talk about, they had to make decisions very early on that they would tell fewer things that they had done, but make sure the impact of what they had done came through. So they'd rather talk about 1 or 2 things, right, with a lot of passion to make sure that the judges could really understand that this wasn't just something we did for charity, but it was something the kids really did to change the world, and make sure that that comes through, because that passion from our experience made all the difference in the world.
Definitely. I mean, this is based off our audience testing, again, that when we were able to get the authenticity and the genuineness and that pure passion, and the best way to get it was talking about these people whose lives being changed. But what's easier to talk about with passion than changing lives?
Right. We also found that it was really hard for the judges to remember numbers if they just heard it at the presentation. So we always made sure that that was something that was put up on the visuals. The kids always use these big boards, which most teams do. And those numbers were always visually there for the judges as well, so that they could see it both visually and hear it at the same time. And the judges had a much better chance of remembering it that way. Well, I'm not sure we're answering your question, but
one of the things we're always really cautious about is that different people have different learning styles. And you don't know what learning style your judges are going to have, right? So if they're visual, you want to make sure you're giving them the data that way. They could also be auditory, in which case you want to give it to them that way. We would always also give them printed out a copy of a ton of stuff, but in there was the visuals that they could follow along with in case they were tactile, they could touch it. We always talked about if there a way we could get smell involved, because people learn to smell or food. We never did. Maybe we should have brought in Tim Tams. But yeah, that was always a joke.
Well, that's a really good point about the different ways people learn it and digest it, because when I was last year at Bridgewater Raynham with someone's mom who's sitting to my left, we were judging, and one of the teams came in and did a takeoff on Hamilton. Okay, I'm an engineer, just give me facts. Okay, and so we got done, and it's like, yeah, okay, but you know, her mom was, wow, that was fantastic. It's like, it was, you know. So you just got to be careful of, you know, going overboard. Unfortunately, you don't know who your judges are going to be, and that stuff, and especially once you make it to Worlds. For instance, like I said before, is 2 years ago in St. Louis, we interviewed Thunder Down Under and that stuff. And I remember the story about the girl and the riptide and that stuff. So, but yeah. So,
Glad to hear it worked.
that's right. That's right.
I wish you did a paper sister. That was a legit story.
Yeah.
That's great.
you kind of use it again this year.
Any other topics you guys want to cover that we haven't yet?
What's the biggest challenge that teams have faced doing chairmans?
So, did you guys hear the question?
But we know it's the biggest something.
Biggest challenge. What's the biggest challenge that each team has faced doing chairmans?
I I guess for us, we always have this sort of mentality on our team that our measuring stick is ourselves. And so every year we were measuring ourselves against ourselves from the previous year. And every year we wanted to be better. And, some years we get to the end and we go, how are we going to top that? Just how are we going to top that? And sometimes next year we didn't. We always try really, really hard. We joke on the team that the saying is we're going to supersize it. So whatever we're going to do, the next year it's okay, how do we supersize that? How do we make this bigger? It's an outreach project, right? We started with one team in the Outback and now we have 200 teams in the program around the world. How do you scale? How do you make it bigger? How do you supersize? And that was our constant challenge of even on the smallest projects, how do we make this bigger? How do we have it have a bigger impact?
It's just for our team would be time management or just trying to handle everything at once because once build season starts, it's just so hectic since everyone's focusing on the robot and we have to take some time, especially for people who are on non-tech and are on the other sub team, which is mechanical or electrical. It isn't always easy to get us all together and do what we need to do, especially for presenters.
Yeah, and I think for us, to add to Gabby, is succession for team members and mentors. Since we have a lot of turnover with college mentors and high school students, we hopefully get them for 4 years, but making sure that the next set of people that come on and want to do award submissions are, retaining the information and understanding the process of it, so we're not kind of dipping after, say when Gabby graduates, we need to make sure that we have people that are younger than her that can work to the caliber and the level that she is. So for us, the outreach is a natural thing, it always has been, but making sure that we're documenting it and putting it in a submission and growing that submission each year and supersizing it, like they said, our outreach, just making sure that there's always going to be somebody there that we don't have to re-explain the process to. They can come and join the group and kind of integrate themselves pretty naturally and then take on leadership roles within that. Because it's really figuring out a system that works best for your team is probably one of the trickiest parts for us. Making sure that there's always a mentor there that will oversee the execution of things, whether it's the essay, the video, and the presentation. For us, one of the biggest struggles is the video. We just this year or last year got a mentor that's really good with editing, and we just got a student that's really good with video editing. But before that, it was just hacking together really janky footage, and it didn't reflect well on the stuff that we were doing. So getting people that are knowledgeable and committed in the different areas is really important, because otherwise you're going to have one mentor or 2 students that are just stretched super thin. And I think, go ahead.
I was just going to add on to one of the things you said that prompted something in my mind, which was for our student presenters, they always made sure that one of the student presenters was usually in year 9, so 9th grade, a freshman on my team, because we never wanted to send in 3 brand new presenters any given year, and our assumption was that we were going to be presenting from now to forever. So we would always have at least one presenter from the previous year, okay, and then sometimes we're really lucky we'd have 2 presenters who had presented before, but we always made sure we had at least one who was brand new for the continuity of the program, because one year we did have 3 brand new kids go in the room, and it was a lot harder. Once kids have been through it once, they really can guide and lead and train that younger student to be able to present in the 31, 32 song. So that helped us a lot.
Yeah, and as a judge, I like to see some underclassmen in there. When you got 3 seniors, then the question is, so what are you doing for next year? Who's going to be here? So if you're going to send in all seniors or upperclassmen, then you got to be able to be prepared to answer the question of what are you doing to train the next crew coming on. So.
Yeah. And one point that we had a conversation with 3132 a few weeks ago, and so on our team we had Gabby, who was the only member of our chairman's team. She was brand new, and She was the only one that was just solely committed to chairman's. Our other two presenters were on the drive team. Yeah, so
Yeah.
they really wanted to do both, and they made it work, but it was definitely like, and they were both leading subgroups. So we had our lead programmer, she was also our operator, and then our human player who was leading one of the mechanical subgroups. So, I mean, it worked out, but it was definitely something we're not gonna do again next year. And I think they've agreed with that too. Like, I wasn't about to say like, hey guys, like make a choice, but I think they realized that you're spreading yourself really thin by doing that, and you're compromising either the drive team or the chairman's team, and it's not fair to do that to the team in general, and it's not fair to have to make that decision. It's like, it's just a bad idea, so.
They were also, Lee was a junior too, like,
Yeah.
then
It
she
was
showed
a
up on something like.
Sorry.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
It was just a blanket rule on 3132. Never made an exception. You had to pick. The biggest reason for that was if you have a match and you have your chairman's presentation, which one are you going to go to? And we never wanted to sacrifice the robot, and we never wanted to sacrifice the presentation.
And we never wanted to put the kids in that situation where they had to make that difficult choice, because that wouldn't have been fair to them.
Also, we really, before the presentation, wanted the kids focused on it, and really, you know, just thinking about that presentation, really focused on it, not worrying about the robot and what's going on. So that was another reason why they couldn't be on both.
Yeah, we might have even taken that a little bit to the extreme. We would pull the kids out of the pits a couple of hours before the presentation. If we had a match, we wouldn't tell them if we had won or lost, because we didn't want them upset if we had lost. We didn't want them overjoyed if we had won. We wanted to focus on the presentation. So they knew they weren't going to know what happened until after.
Yes.
Yeah, we had one team last year, I forgot which event it was, that they had two of the presenters were on the drive team, and they had a match going on when they had signed up for the presentation. Now, luckily, we had an opening right at the end of the day, and at 4:30 or something, so we let them do it then. But you know, we're going like, "Where's the team?" And then we found out, well, yeah, they're on the match, and they're trying to do both things. And like they said, it doesn't work out well.
How many students from your team generally work on the chairman's award? Is it a dedicated group, or is it kind of everybody?
Sorry.
Yeah, basically the question is, how many students on your team work on the Chairman's Award, and is that a dedicated group?
Yeah, so in our case, each year we have somewhere between 4 and 5 students that will work on the submission, and that's pretty much a dedicated group. We don't do a whole lot before build season. We have one student who loves to write. She loves to write the essay. She's written her essay for the last 5 years. She started doing it when she might have even been not old enough to be on the team because she wanted to do it. And so that usually started in December, but the bulk of the work started during build season, and those kids didn't work.
That's for the submission. For the actual stuff that was in it, it was everyone on the team. So it's just expected, and what you do. You help with robot demos and volunteering at our events, and going and helping teams, running the call center. That's all stuff that it's just an expectation on the team. People do it, and they do, and they love it.
So have you guys ever had questions come up in your presentation? So those students that are completely dedicated to chairmans, like, have judges ever asked, like, what do you work on the team? And if they answer like, oh, I'm specifically working on all of our like team outreach and award submissions, like, do judges ever like question like, well, why aren't you working on the robot? Or like, have you gotten feedback about that before?
I don't think, we never go in the room with them,
Mhm.
so I don't know, but I've never heard that question from them. They usually tell us the questions that they got.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I will tell you, we practice answers to questions a lot, especially with the questions we thought the kids would get. And we always made sure that if they got a question, a personal question like that, they answered the question the judge asked, as well as followed on with something that had even more impact. So if they got that question, I hope they would have said something along the lines of, well, my role on the team is to help with the chairman's submission. I don't really do a whole lot on the robot, but never, but and this is how it's impacted my life. This is why it's important to me. And so they, and then they say why it was important to them.
Yeah, the feedback reminds me is that usually you can ask the judges for feedback and they'll fill out a form and give it to you the next day. So for some reason, some teams don't. Not sure why, but you got the opportunity, so get the feedback, and you can have an adult in the room. Last year at one of the events, I had to finally ask the lady to please be quiet because the mentor was answering questions.
Oh boy.
And it was like, no, we tolerated it the first time. She said something to coach the team, and then the second time it was like, no, you're not allowed to talk.
Can't be there.
So,
It's crazy.
yeah.
So to answer the original question, our team, it's changed over the last few years because I think our chairman's team is kind of developing into something bigger and better than it used to be. I think after last season, we've recruited more people that are going to be specifically doing chairmans, but before it was kind of a dangerous balance of, the lead programmer, a lead mechanical student, and, one or two freshmen that were really committed to it, but really learning the process while they were doing it, like learning to ride a bike while doing the Tour de France. So it was a bit much, but I think we learned from that. And just because it worked, we ended up winning district chairmans and then district champs chairmans, just because it worked doesn't mean it was a successful way of doing it. So we're making changes for this season.
I wanted to say one more thing, which was, realize that first is it's about STEM, right? It's not necessarily about robots. And so even if you got the question, are you working on the robot? The students can always talk about how working on the chairman's team or working on the chairman's presentation or the outreach or whatever it is has impacted their own STEM ambitions. So it may be, one of our kids, I can remember distinctly, didn't want to work on the robot at all. He was an amazing presenter. And what he's doing now is he's off at university studying to become a maths teacher because he wants to influence future generations. Right? And so it first really impacted him and made him want to encourage and change the culture in that way. So those are other ways that kids can express how it's impacted them, and it's still STEM related.
How many of you guys here plan on at least submitting this year? Yeah. What about the process is the most I guess challenging or scary thing for you that you feel is going to be the most challenging aspect? Is it the submission, the presentation, video? Yeah.
I guess I'll start off. I see the most interesting part, the most difficult part about it being the submission itself. We have all of our stuff in a location, but the problem is, I was suggested last year to finally buy some binders for them because our lead mentor was nice enough to help organize some of the stuff, but we just got it sitting there. We don't actually have a place for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to buy some binders, but we never got around to actually doing it. And then we only have one or two kids and then a little bit extra, and then the mentors doing the chairmans.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually not the same people who have access to the information.
Okay.
And then what's even worse is that you use an outdated chairman's video. We only decided last year to finally update it.
Okay.
But it was probably the same one for about 2 or 3 years. And they only decided to update it last year. So I think it's just the submission itself that's going to be a little bit difficult.
Right. So when you say you have information and you don't have access to it, is it physical, paper information?
It's paper, but it's, when I say they don't have access to it, it's our team's stationed out at the middle school.
Okay.
We're a high school team at the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
We can only access it during one night a week.
Okay.
But only in build season we can access it, of course, more days than that, but off season we can only access it once a week.
So what type of information is this? Is it historical information about your team?
Yeah, from ever since I think 2005.
So a suggestion I have for you is to sit down with a lead mentor and have conversations about this information and either record the audio and then type it up, or sit there together and type up like little chunks like team history, like your sponsor relationships and community outreach. That way, I mean, it's 2017. We have wonderful Google Drive, which can be accessed on a phone, a laptop, and everything. So getting that information in one document location or just one area would be a great starting point. And that way, like, you can work on it at home on, you know, a weeknight or during your study hall or whatever with friends. So that's like one simple way to at least get over that hurdle. Because that is pretty crazy that you only have the physical paper. That's old school. Yeah.
Yeah, we have old newspaper articles from before 2010, old thank you letters, old sponsorship letters, and even old like donor letters from before that.
Our team is in the process of switching communications over to Slack. And one of the things that we've done is created a Slack channel called Outreach-Questions. And one of the students every day or two, she writes up about a paragraph on some of the outreach activities that we've done. She just sends it out. And that's really for the newer students to get an idea of what we're doing. But it's also a place that if people have questions, they can ask. And a lot of our alumni, I'm an alumni of the team, and a lot of us are still involved with the program, and we're all on there and can chime in if it's a historic project. So if that's what we're trying. Also Google Drive. Our team loves all Google products. Especially Google Drive. Every year we have an on-season tournaments folder and an on-season tournaments folder, and they are massive, and we love them.
Folder consumption. Cool. Any other things that people are like super apprehensive or like nervous about when it comes to the actual submission or the presentation, video, interview process?
I have a question. I got here because I saw those before. So like, well, my team is on a bunch of outreach. But the thing is, like, it's not very diverse. Just us, like, going and go, but we built testers, candidates, and bench. We've been doing that, like, often, but it's like the same exact thing over and over again. Like, I know what we're doing. I'm like, I think we would be doing it week of quarter hour ago. So I'm not sure those are like things that we can like present to chairman and like judges and things like if you know like good.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard that. There was a student that came in late. So she was saying that her outreach for their team, they're doing a lot of it, but it seems to be the same thing. They built a robot that shoots candy, which is really cool, and they've been bringing it places. And they're looking to do like an hour of code, and they're wondering if that, like, even though it's the same thing, like, should it be something that they should be talking about, like, with the judges and stuff? I think yes. You can quantify, even if you're doing the same thing over and over, quantify it. Like, we reached X amount of people in like 5 demos or something. So if you use your candy shooting robot, you can say, you know, you've shot candy with a robot to over like 100 people or 100 young people. And that, I mean, even just a candy shooting robot, you're exposing students to STEM, your team in first while doing that. And something simple like an hour of code, you can do that in so many like different places pretty easily. So I mean, anything you're doing that even may seem normal or not like special to you is something that makes your team your team. And you guys are relatively young, right? You're 6201.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what, your second year? Third year? Yeah. So I mean, even as a third year team, that's really awesome to be doing any outreach at that point. Yeah. Did you guys want to add anything to that?
We couldn't really hear any of what you said.
Oh. Sorry.
So yeah, I agree. We would be doing about 20 to 30 robot demos a year at this point. So it's an event over and over again. We run so many first competitions, which are effectively the same thing over and over again. There is power in doing things multiple times because you never know when that outcome is going to come. The other thing I would say is we always tried to put our spin on things. We always wanted to do things that were different and creative. So our team motto is innovate, improve, inspire the world, and we really take that innovate seriously. So what can you do that's unique to your team? What can your team do that no one else is doing? Where is there a need in New England that your team can help fill? And then go and do it. So we were always trying to find problems that we can look for solutions. That's one of our big things, is every problem is just an opportunity.
Can I ask our judge, is there any, you shouldn't do this in presentations?
Other than having the mentor not talk. No, I think, you come in and introduce yourselves and, shake hands with the judges and, don't be afraid of the judges. We've had some students that stand on the far side of the room. It's like, I've never seen the judge bite a student yet, so it's probably safe to get a little bit closer. And I guess the one thing would be is to make sure the students don't talk over each other. There's some that practice it enough that student 1 gets done talking and student 2 goes right on. It's almost like keep the sentence going as opposed to, talking over them or something. But I think it's also okay for them to interact. We've seen students, kind of banter back and forth a little bit, providing us information. So the one interesting thing, I think it was Bridgewater Raynham last year, we were in the boys' locker room. And so when the teams came in, I welcomed them to the boys' locker room. And I had one young lady go, "I've never been here before." To which my response is probably inappropriate, but I said, "And your parents are happy for that." Okay? It just seemed like a very strange comment coming from somebody. But, as we said before, don't plan on having a video screen up. The boards, the phone core boards that you can just set up quickly, those work. And don't just babble. Don't, know when your time limit is and use it effectively, but allow the judges some time to answer questions. Because at Worlds, the team I was on 2 years ago, they were 7 minutes, you stop talking, and we start interrogating. And except when I forget to stop, we set the timer and that stuff. But so it's, sometimes it gets really specific, so you gotta be paying attention to the time.
Any other questions or comments before we wrap up here? Because it is 4 o'clock here.
We have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So we just one of the things that our team is becoming increasingly passionate about is helping others with their chairman's submission process. We're not submitting anymore, and so we really want to help others with the submission and really help other teams do more through the submission process. So if there is any way that we can help you, please let us know either now or you can get in touch with us through our Facebook page, First Team Bid Representative 2, or we have a contact us form that we actually now reply to our team emails. It's amazing. Yeah, please get in touch because we love helping teams with this. And if there's any support that we can provide, we'd love to know what it is.
So is there anything you can think of right now that we can do to help you guys, or to help other teams in your area or anywhere around the world?
We'll be sure to hand out your contact information today. I'll just put it in an email blast to all the attendees. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us so early in the morning there. You're in the future right now. That's pretty exciting.
That's right, Sunday morning.
It's Sunday there.
We're happy to report the world exists on Sunday morning, so look out for those tomorrow.
All right, well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Talking to you.
Bye.
All right.